Martin Hannett, the producer, amazing. I mean, it was just the whole vibe of the band that just created the texture and the tension.
You know, all great bands, when they make those first records, need someone who understands what they're after, otherwise it won't happen. So if they say, look, we want it to sound a bit like Kraftwerk meets Iggy Pop, then you really need someone to make that happen. And Martin Hannett could clearly make it a reality with his own spaced out view of sonics.
No matter which band he worked with, he had a sound. I don't know how he got it. It was dirty. It just set a vibe. His sound set a vibe with every band he worked with.
Yeah, I was just put loads of odd effects and echoes on things to make things look even more starker than they were. But I think that's part of the imagery that they were playing around with as well.
The guitars didn't sound like guitars per se, and the drums didn't sound like rock and roll drums, and the bass certainly didn't sound like a kind of conventional bass.
He was able to set this vibe and this darkness. I guess he was a really dark guy, and basically he was able to capture the band's performance, but also bring this ambient thing to it. You know, I think he's like incredibly underrated.
Martin Hannett, the legendary record producer, built his reputation working with such groups as Slaughter and the Dogs, the Stone Roses, Orchestral Manoeuvres in the Dark, Kitchens of Distinction and U2. But it was his seminal work with Joy Division that fully established his global profile. Epileptic, depressive and a substance abuser, Ian Curtis was the focus for the public's fascination with Joy Division. The strange, charismatic frontman brought his enthrallment with German sensibilities and history to the band.
We're talking about German romanticism and German left-wing filmmakers, as well as things German. But there was a German obsessiveness there.
This obsession had worked its way into the name of the band, the neoclassic style of the band's image, and the Nietzschean nihilism of the music. This artistic focus has led to over 20 years of accusations that Joy Division was fascist.
There was something vaguely sinister about Joy Division. There was something very sinister about the name.
And the kind of tantalising idea of Joy Division being named after the prostitute wing of a concentration camp, you know.
They were just trying to do something that was interesting. They were certainly not trying to, wave swastikas around or anything like that.
For somebody like Joy Division to come along and mess about with the imagery was beyond irresponsible, really. It wasn't even responsible, it was just daft and stupid, and they shouldn't have done it.
The physicality of Ian was completely separate, because off stage, off screen, so to speak, he was quite timid and still. As soon as the singing was involved in the performing in front of people, he just became a completely different person. I suppose then you were seeing the aged, wise person. Off screen, off stage, you were seeing a kid almost, bony kid, with a pint and very shy. And on screen, a monster, living out his nightmares.
Curtis was like just this completely angst-ridden, tortured kind of guy, you know what I mean, who wasn't even trying to sing, was kind of talking over the records in a lot of ways.
He wanted to find areas that no one had been before, and people were giving him a searchlight and showing him areas. Iggy showed him an area, Kraftwerk showed him an area, Ballard and Buzz and German filmmakers, they all showed him areas he could go into, but he wanted to make sure he was the first one there.
It wasn't about a fashion or a trend or something that was going on at the time. It was of itself.
I mean, I think that was something that else was so startling, the difference between off stage and on, between the everyday person who was the thinker, and then the person on stage who turned those thoughts into incredible sort of art.
Married with a young child, Ian sought solace from the pressures of family life and the band's growing success in the arms of other women, eventually having a passionate affair with Belgian Annick Honnel.
With with Ian, you know, the idea of the sex and drugs and rock and roll, it's mixed in there, there's no doubt about it, because if you're into Iggy and you're into the Velvets and everything, that whole thing is there as part of the myth. It's part of risking your life, in a way, for the sake of your entertainment, for the sake of your art, you know, taking it that seriously.
At that moment in time, Joy Division seemed to have everything that a young audience of, say, especially young men, wanted. It was physically exciting, but it was thought-provoking and absorbing.
A bunch of boys fell in love with him. They kind of fantasised about being as deep as Ian and as emotionally racked as Ian, and that kind of, you know, it really was a kind of, you know, sparrows coughing on the windowsills in the bleakest of Manchester with grey skies, the sun never shone, life was awful, you know, how brilliant is this? He was a pretty good looking guy, and they were captivated by him, but it was a kind of fairly homoerotic kind of thing as far as I could see.
He just looked like a kind of haunted sort of poet murderer figure. I mean, that just was tremendously romantic to me. I mean, you know, he was a romantic figure because